Hello, friends. Welcome back to How the Light Gets In. So, as I think I've mentioned before, I've gotten kind of addicted to TikTok, and I know it's allowing the Chinese to steal all of my data and information. But the trade-off for the entertainment value, I feel like, is worth it. Also, I'm a deeply boring person, so whatever they want to mine from me, they can mine from me, whatever. Anyway, there's this one particular TikTok audio, and maybe you've heard it, and maybe you've had it, but it goes a little something like this. Not to be straight phobic, but can you imagine waking up every day and thinking, Grey's Anatomy is the best? And I do find that hilarious, but also it hurts my feelings a little bit, because I kind of think Grey's Anatomy is the best. And obviously it's an insane, ridiculous show, because no one gets shot and drowns and burned and clashes in a plane, and those things don't happen all to the same group of people. It's an insane show with an insane premise and tenuous medical knowledge. But it's also really entertaining. And on top of that, there is one particular aspect of relationships that I find myself talking about on a daily basis that Grey's Anatomy 100% nails. We've talked about David Schnarch off and on for several months because I'm obsessed with him. And one of the things that he talks about intensely throughout all of his books is the idea of holding on to yourself. And holding on to yourself is about coping with your own anxiety, not giving up on your own desires, not compromising things that you don't want to compromise. It's the back door to avoid resenting your partner for the rest of your relationship because you made a choice you didn't really want to make for them. David Schnarch talks a lot about the importance of not treating your partner as too important. When your partner becomes so important that you can't stand to lose them, you start to compromise yourself. And that leads to resentment and usually affairs and eventually divorce and separation. Because you can't squash yourself like that over and over and over again and not expect there to be some kind of backdoor problem, which in this case is resentment and shame. And Grey's Anatomy does a really good job of demonstrating what it looks like to hold on to yourself. You see this in Derek and Meredith's relationship when Derek wants to go to Washington, D.C. and work with the NIH and Meredith doesn't. You see this in Owen and Christina's relationship when Owen wants a baby and Christina doesn't. And then you see this again with Joe and Alex when Alex wants to get married and Joe doesn't. And in all of those situations, the relationship doesn't work out. Also Jackson and April, because April wants to go back to Jordan and Jackson's not into it. Anyway, in all of those situations, the relationship doesn't work out because the issue that they're fighting about is not one that you can really compromise on. There's no halfway point between having a baby and not having a baby. You can get a dog, but that's still not exactly it. But what the show shows you over and over again is that if you're not willing to defend what you really want, you wind up miserable. There's one episode in particular that I'm thinking of right now, and it's the one where Christina imagines a number of different futures for herself and for Owen, one of which involves her having kids and others that don't. And in the one where she has kids, she winds up miserable and resentful because, of course, she did a thing she didn't want to do for the person that she loved. And there is romance in that, and there's nobility in that, and it's a super nice idea. But in practice, it's real stupid because there's compromising yourself on that level does not lead to a beautiful shared experience that allows you to connect and grow. It leads to resentment, which is a feeling that we hide because just like shame, it doesn't feel like it can see the light of day and not be catastrophic to our relationships and our sense of selves. And long-term resentment leads to, problems in your relationship because how can you love someone that you also kind of hate? The idea that I've talked about this before, probably several times, and probably in more than one of these videos, but I'm going to do it again because it's important and I care. So if you've ever been to a wedding, you've probably seen that stupid unity candle thing that a lot of married couples used to do. I haven't seen it in a while, so I feel like it's kind of fallen out of favor, which makes me really happy because it's dumb. But anyway, there's one big center candle, and then the bride has a candle, and the groom has a candle, and they light a candle together. And then they blow these candles out. which is infuriating because you don't stop being a human being when you get married. Like, your selfness does not disappear in favor of your relationship. That's not how this works. 1 + 1 = 3. There's you, your partner, and your relationship. 3 separate entities that exist. So married couples who come to see me for marriage counseling, they use phrases a lot like, we need to be on the same page and we need to be in the same boat. And I correct them because that is the wrong kind of thinking. Not that it can't happen, but I just don't know how realistic of a goal it is for most people. Because to truly be on the same page or in the same boat, you would need to have completely the same goals, lined up exactly the same, with the same values and the same core beliefs and the same ideas of what is worth sacrificing and what isn't, and what is worth taking on and there's too many variables that go into that make it not super feasible to actually be in the same boat or on the same page. So what I tell people instead is that when you enter into a relationship, you're both in your own kayak, individually. And ideally, your kayaks will stay somewhat together. You will stay in the same stream, moving in the same direction, and choosing the same forks. But not always. And that doesn't always mean that the relationship has to end, but it does mean that sometimes you need to kind of go your own way because your particular goals may or may not line up with your partner's. And that's where holding on to yourself comes in. Because when you reach those kinds of crossroads, which Dr. Schnarch calls emotional gridlock, hard choices have to be made. And the thing that stops people from making those hard choices and moving forward in their lives and in their relationships is that they can't deal with the anxiety of the uncertainty about their relationship. And that drives people to make a lot of really unoptimal choices, is how I'm gonna put it, because my gut reaction was to say dumb, but that's not fair. A really good example of that, if you haven't seen the movie Midsummer, you really should, because it's incredibly good. But there's this conversation that happens at the beginning of the movie between Christian, the main character's boyfriend, and his friends, where he's talking about how he kind of wants to break up with her, but he's afraid he's gonna regret it later. And I probably don't have to tell you that that's like a really stupid reason to stay in a relationship, but it's a reason that a lot of people stay in relationships. Because they don't super want to be there, but they feel like if they weren't, it might be worse, and that's not worth the risk. That's not an integrity move. That's not a decision made from the best of you. That's you being unwilling to face your own anxiety around change and an unwillingness to deal with the discomfort that would come with a decision of that magnitude. So they just sit still and hope that things work out and magically get better, and they don't do that most of the time. Problems do not disappear if you refuse to acknowledge that they exist. I think we all know that. I mean, we tell ourselves that it's true because then we can keep doing what we want instead of having to deal with the stuff that we don't want to deal with, but it ain't accurate. The point of this is that Grey's Anatomy super fan, please make that show forever, I don't care. And 2, figure out what it is that you want, and figure out which of your wants are worth compromising and which aren't. A lot of us have trouble with what Dr. Schnarch calls wanting to want. Because in order to truly want something, you have to acknowledge that you lack something. And for a lot of people, that's a deeply uncomfortable question. People will tell you that they are content when they're really not, because to acknowledge that something is missing is painful and uncomfortable. And once you know that it's missing, you're kind of setting yourself up to have to deal with the fact that it's not there. So let yourself want stuff, and then decide how you're going to pursue it. Too many of us, I think, stay stuck because we don't want to deal with how uncomfortable it will be to try to move forward. We don't want to have to feel the anxiety of uncertainty, and we don't want to have to deal with the fallout of the big decisions that we secretly want to make. Figuring out how to hold on to yourself is a tremendous skill. And once you can do that, there's literally nothing that you can't handle. Because all that holding on to yourself really means is that you believe that you are important enough to prioritize your own needs and wants, and that you have the ability to sit with your own anxiety. and tolerate that discomfort for as long as you need to get to the point that you want to get to. And honestly, I think if everyone on Earth possessed those two skills, I don't know that my job would need to exist. I mean, it would, but not in the way that it currently does. Because if you can tolerate discomfort and you can prioritize yourself and you can deal with whatever has to come up to get where you want to go, like, that's mostly what I do. Like, not all the time, but most of the time. And, oh God, what would I do then? I have no other marketable skills. Okay. Kind of learned this a little bit, but not all the way, and then I can keep having my job. Yeah. Okay, that's it, guys. Hold on to yourself, read a Dr. Schnarch book, and watch Grey's Anatomy, because it's an A+ show. Follow me on Twitter at HTLGIvids. You can email me at howthelightgetsinvids@gmail.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram, where I post weird stuff from my life. Have a good week. I'll talk to you guys next time.